The lower axis basically is the pH axis, which is from 4 right up to 10. And if you see, I just said between 5.5 to 6.5, all elements are very well available. If you see, the bands are very thick. But if the pH value was to drop to 4, the nitrogen will be just not available, the potassium won't be available, the phosphorus won't be available, the sulfur won't be available. But however, if the pH went to 4, the iron becomes so broad, that means you'll suffer with iron toxicity. Means the plants will get much more iron than what it needs. So whenever you're growing a plant, you must remember there is no agriculture, there are no formulas in agriculture. There are only guides in agriculture. So if anyone is looking for formula, I tell them, no, there's no formula how you bring up your child. Everyone has a different kind of a kid with a different mental makeup, and you've got to treat each kid differently. So each plant, each crop has to be treated differently. So here, whenever you're growing plants, there are guides which tell you approximate pH, what are the pH in which certain plants grow. You can try growing it that way, and you can keep understanding. If you get a toxicity in the plant, maybe you're not checked your pH properly. And if you get a deficiency, that means your pH may not be in range. So you need to bring your pH back to range, the correct range, only then they become available. If the pH goes below 5.5 or if the pH goes above 6.5, there will be something called nutrient lockout. That means these nutrients don't become, they're not dissolved anymore in the water, and they precipitate and sit at the bottom. So if you've got a tank filled with nutrient pani, but your pH is not right, you may be hand watering, and you may be taking water with a mug and giving it to the plant without realizing that there are many elements which have already been sitting at the bottom. That is how you get a deficiency in the plant. That's why you're not able to take your plant to the potential. That is why you cannot take your flowers make your flowers become fruits. Sometimes you have flower fall. Flowers just keep falling. Why? Because something is missing out there. Now, in hydroponics, we use something called technical grade nutrient. It's a little different from the way we do it in soil. So what we do, we use 11 salts, solid fertilizers. I'll write them down so that you can keep a record. There are 3 kinds of fertilizers in the world. One fertilizer is the soil fertilizer, which we call as fertilizer grade fertilizer. Then we have the technical grade fertilizer, which we use in soilless cultivation or hydroponics. And then we have the 3rd grade of fertilizer, which is called the lab grade or the pharmaceutical grade. But of course, that's so expensive, no farmer can afford it, or nobody can use it. So we come in between fertilizer grade fertilizer. Now fertilizer grade fertilizer may be 100% water soluble, but it's about the purity of the, like if you get a kilogram of whatever, how much of impurities are there in it. Whereas in technical grade, even there it's not 100% purity, it is 99.98% purity. Whereas in lab grade or pharmaceutical grade, it's 100% purity, because when you swallow a tablet, you cannot have something that goes and gets lodged in your brain or somewhere you get a stroke. So we cannot use lab grade because it's too expensive, but you can use technical grade fertilizer. So what are the fertilizers that we use in hydroponics? use 11 salts in technical grade fertilizer, starting with potassium nitrate, potassium sulfate, monopotassium phosphate, calcium nitrate, magnesium sulfate, iron, copper, zinc, manganese, boric acid or boron, and ammonium molybdenate. But the main, in all nutrition, all kinds of nutrition in the world for agriculture, the main three guys are nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. The rest are all iron, copper, zinc, manganese. They are called micronutrients, but they are needed, they play vital roles. For example, ammonium molybdenate in a 5 kg of the nutrients that I make, it is so tiny amount that I sometimes wonder where has it gone. But ammonium molybdenate is a catalyst for picking up nitrogen from the media, especially when it's needed in the vegetative stage of growth. So we have these 11 salts. Now I told you they need 13 solid elements, but there are only 11 salts here. Can anyone tell me what are the two salts which are, two elements that come from these 11 to make it 13? Any guess? Okay, I assume that you're all new. So the sulfate or the sulfur comes from magnesium sulfate and potassium sulfate. So sulfur is the the 12th element, and your phosphorus comes from monopotassium phosphate. Phosphate is a form of potassium, phosphorus. So you get 13 elements totally, and the rest are the gases, which are carbon dioxide, hydrogen and oxygen, which is free, which is there in the atmosphere. So these are the salts, ladies and gentlemen, these are the salts which are used in our methodology. Now, again, that's why now as I keep talking, you'll realize how much of science goes into growing plants. It's not something that you just do randomly, because if you do random things, you get random answers, random results. But if you do something properly, you have to get proper results. So how is the play of all this N, P and K as far as we are concerned with plant growing? So I make, basically in the industry there are different kinds of nutrition manufacturers. Some people say I have a 1-pack nutrient, some people say we have a 2-pack nutrient, and some people say 3-pack nutrient. So I am from the 3rd pack, the 3-pack guy. Okay, so out of the 11 salts I prepare 3 types of nutrients. The grow, the bloom and the root nutrient. Every crop in the whole world, any plant in the beginning must go through something called vegetative growth. That means they need to have lots of vegetation happening there, because you need lots of leaves. You need not only just lots of leaves, the leaves have to have the right width, by genetics what it should be. Why? Because in the initial stage, okay, when you look at palak and other things, there's no flowering and fruiting. That's okay, but there you still need to give certain among the N, P and the K, that is the nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. It's a play of that. So now we have N, P, K. At different stages you need different things more and less. So when a plant is growing through the vegetative stage, that's an initial stage, it needs maximum amount of nitrogen to be able to get what? Maximum leaves, maximum foliage. And if you're growing, for example, a tomato crop, the first 45-50 days, the plant should have the maximum vegetative growth full of leaves, so that it can attract enough of light from the sun and create enough amount of photosynthesis, because we think that we are giving plants by giving them nutrition in salt form mixing with the water, but we many times don't realize that plants produce their own food by photosynthesis. So light in the presence of carbon dioxide and water will carry out a process or make a process to happen, which is called photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, the plants produce a lot of sugars, amino acids, carbohydrates and what have you. That is what the plant creates out of photosynthesis, and that food is stored in the plant, and it waits for the next thing to happen, that is flowering stage. So moment the plant's genetics understands that I've got this much of light, I've produced optimum level of food, only then it moves to the next stage. How many of us men have had mustache at the age of 4? You get a mustache maybe at the age of 13, 14, 15, depends, right? But your genetics decides that. Same thing as plants. Plants also have genes in them which trigger certain things to happen. So when the photosynthesis has happened for the right amount of time, the photo period has happened, at that stage when all the food has been prepared, then the plant moves into flowering stage, fruiting stage, and so on. So in the initial stage, for vegetative growth, the plants need highest amount of nitrogen. And in the mix that we make, there is potassium and phosphorus, but they are kept subdued. You can see the arrow size. When you're using grow, and say for example you're growing a vine crop like capsicum or cucumber or tomato or any of these things, when you see the first flower, at that point you stop giving grow and you go to bloom nutrient. If you continue to give grow after seeing that flower, what will happen is you'll only get vegetative growth, but you won't get a fruit. You'll only get flowers, you'll get foliage, but what are you going to do with foliage? You can't eat tomato leaves, right? So you have to move to bloom nutrient. When you move to a bloom nutrient, what happens? The nitrogen which was so high earlier, that becomes a smaller arrow. You bring it down because you don't want vegetative growth, and then you increase the phosphorus a little more than before, but here the potassium is the highest. So you need potassium for fruit growth, and you need phosphorus for root growth. So when you see the first flowers, you move from grow to bloom. Now what is root nutrient? Root nutrient is for carrot, beetroot, turmeric, ginger, anything that grows below the media. That means in the root zone, tubers. So as far as root is concerned, you can't see whether new beetroot has started growing or carrot has started growing. So we carry out something called a root zone analysis. That means every month we actually remove the cocoa peat and put this plant into waters, see the roots and see whether new turmeric is growing, new something is coming. When you see the first fresh growth happening, you will move from grow to root nutrient. Again here, nutrient and nitrogen is kept low, potassium, phosphorus is taken very high, and potassium which was so high is also brought down so that the roots grow properly. Now just to give you an example, we are doing a Mission Turmeric 2021. We are working on turmeric, and many of our students are doing this all over the place. So every month they do what is known as a root zone analysis, and the moment they see the new rhizomes, we call them rhizomes, or the new turmeric or haldi or adrak, ginger growing, you stop giving grow and move to root. If you continue to give grow nutrient, you'll get a lot of leaves. It happens to farmers in my state, in Karnataka, where they grow potatoes. There are farmers who do not understand that there is a science behind it. You can't blame them, and though nobody tells them that, they keep giving a lot of nitrogen, and when they actually go and harvest, they find, hey, there are no potatoes. Now, can you sell your potato leaves in the market? Who's going to buy? So that is why there is science behind agriculture. Why you do what you do. You don't do things randomly. You got to do things because there's science. You could ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is my objective? What am I trying to achieve? What did I observe? I took an action. What was the result of that action? That is how you grow plants. How do you bring up a baby or your own children at home? You keep correcting their course, right? You keep telling them, no, this is right, this is how to do, that's the way you do. So what we do is, we empower our plants. We empower the plant. So plant is a very innocent little thing. It's like a baby. It says, I need water, give it water. I need food, give it food. I need a little bit more light, give it light. So what are you doing? You're empowering the plant. Suppose your child loves music and wants to learn the guitar. Maybe the child doesn't like to play the piano, but he would like to learn the violin or the guitar. What would you do? Send him to a violin school or a guitar school, or buy him a guitar and say, learn. What have you done? You empowered your child. You understood the child has this talent, but unless you empower the child, how is the child ever going to be a violinist? Same thing is with plants. You got to give them tender, loving care. You got to be with them and like I was telling a senior officer of mine from the submarines, Commodore Brar, that my students at my 90-day training program in Bangalore, they don't get one single day holiday. They put the seed, they take it to harvest. No question of holiday at all. 90 days straight. Means you got to be with your child for 90 days and show me the harvest. Simple as that. So, growing plants, being a farmer is not easy as it looks, especially if you are trying to get into commercial horticulture. You must understand you are entering into a realm